Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the latest in the NORA Winners series, a series of webcasts where we're speaking to the winners in the NORAs for our 21st year. People who have been watching the show over the past few months will have seen that before the NORAs, we had shows with many of the organisations who are involved in helping to make sure that the NORAs happens, with sponsors, with judges, with a variety of other people. And from the NORAs onwards, which was on the 10th of November, what we have now is our winner series where we're speaking to organisations who have been successfully taking home trophies. Our very special guest today is a holder of one of those trophies for the second time, was also the winner last year. And the reason that we have these shows is that at the awards event, and of course in the run-up to it, we don't know who the winners are going to be, but at the awards event, we're not able to dig into to the whys and wherefores of how companies became to be award-worthy and voted for as finalists and ultimately as winners in the NORAs. And what we want to do here is shine a more forensic light, if you like, on the winners and find out what got them to this stage, what were some of the thousands of decisions that are made to make any website award-worthy in the eyes of the NORA judges and, of course, the job seekers who nominate them in the first place. So can I ask you to welcome my very special guest, Simon Wingate, who is Managing Director of read.co.uk. Simon, good afternoon. How the devil are you?
Good afternoon. Yeah, very well, thank you. Yourself?
I'm very well indeed. Thanks. It's good to see you. It's good to see your branding behind you there as well. We love Mondays.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're always on brand. Always on brand here.
Always on brand. ABB, always be branding. So Simon, we're at the tail end of the year. We've had chaos, jobs-wise and career-wise and so on. But are you feeling festive?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. We're definitely we're having a very busy second half of the year for sure. So I'd like to say I've had enough time to think about being festive, but no, we've still got too much going on at the moment.
Yeah. So before we kick off, by way of background, I imagine that everyone should certainly know or have their own preconceptions about Read and the background there. But can you give us a bit of a background of not only Read but yourself as well?
Yeah, of course. So I guess in terms of our business more generally, as many of you will know, I guess the Read brand has been around in the recruitment market since 1960. So read.co.uk originally launched in 1995 as being the website of the recruitment business. And in 2000, someone had the idea of allowing Read's traditional competitors to advertise on its website, which was quite a controversial and interesting decision at that particular point. But what it demonstrated was the power of online as a place to recruit. So in 2007, read.co.uk became a separate entity. So separated from the recruitment business and set up on its own as a sort of commercial entity, as it were. So we've been in existence in its current form since 2007. So while we share a brand with the recruitment agency and share, I guess, the family who own us, we're separate entities. Read are a customer of ours. So yeah, we've got a good heritage within the recruitment market for sure.
Yeah. That name recognition is obviously it's a very strong thing, but of course, people inevitably will associate one with the other, and whilst they be the same parentage, having different businesses makes sense. The history of the recruitment industry in the UK, actually, the pandemic kind of interrupted me. I was in the process of putting together a documentary on the evolution of job boards in the UK, and obviously there were some companies in the very early stages like JobServe and JobSite and so on who were kind of writing the rule book on how that grew. But the introduction of Read to the market and offering free advertising at the time to recruitment agencies, essentially rivals of the Read recruitment agency, was revolutionary at the time, and a lot of people were scratching their heads thinking, are these people bananas? This is just crackers. But bring us up to where we are. Winning a NORA 2 years in a row, and recognised as the top, if not one of the top recruitment websites in the UK. And who's crackers now?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So yeah, no, I'd like to just to point out to our audience, I do have the award with me here. So no, you're absolutely right. No, I'm very very excited to obviously be a winner this year. But you're absolutely right. It's I guess we've been our own kind of entity for the last 14 years, and yeah, I would hope that now I guess the Reed brand is pretty synonymous with recruitment, but certainly Reed.co.uk is a incredibly established brand now in its own right for sure.
Absolutely. I should also point out that Reed were in the top 3 for our Academy Award this year. The Academy Award is one which the members of the NORA Academy, which is to say all the companies who have been finalists and winners in the NORAs over the past 21 years, they get to vote for that. And being in the top 3 for that is no small feat at all. So, a big achievement there. And again, to be 2-time winners. As I say, Reed has a unique position amongst job boards in the UK, and the way in which you present yourselves to market is obviously each organisation will be unique. Given your brand, which is recruitment through and through, then people would have raised expectations about your credibility and knowledge of the recruitment market. That gives you a step ahead of your regular, more conventional job boards.
Yeah, I think it's a really good observation. I think from our perspective, because of the nature of our history, as we've already discussed, I think recruitment is inherent within our DNA, really. So we built our business, first of all, really by understanding a very large recruitment business, and have always used that philosophy to try and build our service. So it's very much, I guess, when I first joined the business in 2010, it was very much a recruitment service which was kind of built by recruiters and with the knowledge of recruitment. So, and we've always put users very much at the heart of it. So I guess when we're trying to develop services, our aim is absolutely to try and understand the user problem that we're trying to solve, to try and maximize value from users. And I think that recruitment heritage goes a long way to actually, I guess, creating the way that we've built this service, which is very much with employers and job seekers in mind.
Yeah. As a commercial business, then of course you have to focus on employers. But I always feel that if you make not all, but most of your decisions based on what's good for candidates, you can't go too far wrong. And having that front of mind in all decision making is the key to delivering great service to them. If you can do that for candidates, the advertisers will come because they need to find those candidates for jobs. So in the generalist section for our awards, we look at recruitment websites who are covering all industries and all areas of the country. That's a big challenge for any organisation to make sure that there are no gaps or holes in your coverage. That there are parts in North Wales that people don't know or use your website, or there are industries that don't. But are there industries and locations where you would be able to say Reed is absolutely the place to go, or is it right across the board?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think historically, like many organisations of a similar ilk to our own, we have been very, very strong around, I guess, big, hubs of population. So naturally, big cities. I guess if you sort of start at the southeast and work your way up to the northwest, we've obviously always been incredibly strong in those areas. But I think what we've certainly seen over the years is that actually our kind of brand has served us very well UK wide for sure. Yeah. So just because you're in more rural locations, we have lots of customers and lots of job seekers who are not city based. And certainly, obviously, what we've all seen in the last 18 months, 2 years is a real change in, I guess, where people are not just living, where people are working. Then the sort of advent of more remote working has changed that dynamic for sure. Over the last 18 months or so. So while we've historically been very, very strong around major cities, I think that has changed, and I think that will continue to change in future, where people we're sort of democratized location a little bit over the last 18 months. So where you're based isn't necessarily as important as it once was. Yeah.
So with your hand on the tiller during the turbulent times of the past 18 months, how is it possible to continue to evolve as an organization and address that marketplace? How do you know what candidates want?
A really good question. So I think we've taken an approach historically, which is very much user, whether that be job seeker or B2B sort of paying customer focused. And actually, that's really what we've focused on over the last 18 months. So we've had to operate very differently than what we did previously, as you can probably imagine. But I think a lot of the things that we've done since, I guess, March 2020 is really make sure that we adapt to the times. So we've done lots of things to make job seeking easier. So we've, I guess whether it be we've worked with public sector organisations, with people like the NHS, to try and make jobs within, I guess, key roles more accessible for people. We've made it easier for individuals to find roles which are remote working or more flexible. So we've really looked at what kind of user trends are and tried to augment our service accordingly. And I think that's obviously part of our philosophy anyway, but actually in the last 18 months, that's probably been more important than ever, because of the nature of the fact that the wider world has changed, not just how people look for jobs, but how people are recruiting. So, as an example, one of the things that we know is that we introduced a working from home filter on our job search last year. And people were probably twice as likely to apply for a job if they knew that it had flexible working as the ones that didn't. So I guess that's just one example of what we've tried to do to improve our service to make sure it's, I guess, appropriate for the times.
Yeah. Louise asks in the chat bar here, do you prefer the term job board or job search platform?
So it's a really excellent question, actually. And so internally, it's an interesting conversation, actually. So internally, we don't use the term job board to describe ourselves. So I guess our aim is to be so much more than just a job board. And our aim is really based on the fact that our proposition is quite multifaceted. So yes, we have a big job search proposition, but also we have a very successful courses proposition as well. So actually, we've started to call ourselves a jobs and careers site, because actually our aim is very much to be, I guess, hold people's hand throughout their career. So it's not just about finding their first job or even finding a job per se. It's actually trying to give them access to learning opportunities, whether that be distance or in-class learning. So actually, I think the job board isn't necessarily a language that we would use internally in order to try and differentiate ourselves from the competition, but also to visualize where we want to get to in the future. So that careers platform is very much where we're headed.
That's a really good point, and of course that's one of the key areas that made Reed award worthy compared to your competitors, because having that greater reason to come to the site, not just what vacancies are available today, but that there's a stickiness to the site, that there's compelling content, that there's career advice and information that they can that job seekers can learn from and learn more about their position in the marketplace is really valuable. Because right now we know, well, certainly over the past year, there's been points where people have been looking for jobs in huge numbers, or very, hesitant to apply at all. We know that the numbers of applications in the past 6 months that you would expect to typical jobs has dipped, and that employers are having to use different tactics to engage with those candidates. It might just be that they need to rewrite their vacancies in different ways. It might be that they present themselves in different ways, but as a bridge to those candidates, then as a job and career site, you need to be more welcoming, and it needs to feel more like a club, if you like. A website they can come back to on a daily basis.
I agree. I think it's sorry to interrupt you, but I couldn't agree with you more. I think we've, I guess, in our space, it's always been a relatively transactional relationship with a user. So in a strange way, if someone doesn't come back to our service, that could be success because they've successfully found a job. But our aim is to have a much longer term relationship with them. Exactly as you've said, if they're an entry-level accountant, how can we give them the information about how to progress their career, but also access to the right course that gives them the next move on the ladder? So I guess that's absolutely our aim, is to have other reasons to engage with our service aside from I'm just looking for a job now. So you're absolutely right. Yeah.
One of the areas of stats that I'm always fascinated to know more about with especially generalist job boards covering the UK is the behaviours of candidates. So, for example, the frequency with which you can detect that someone is looking for a new job, having had a job 2 years ago? Are they doing it every 2 years, every 1 year, every 6 months? So that kind of frequency, whether that's different in different industry sectors, whether you can tell that a candidate is moving from one area of the country to another, because of course, if people are registering and updating their CVs and the CVs are being parsed, then being able to discern that information from what they do and how they do it. Are you seeing patterns of job changing and frequency with which people are coming back to you? Is that changing in the past year?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic actually, because what we so the answer is yes, we have seen some changes, not just in terms of the regularity with which people engage with our service, but actually what they're doing once they arrive on our website. So you asked about location earlier on, and actually one of the things that we've seen in the last 18 months is an increasing number of users applying for jobs outside their necessarily their local area or areas that they've traditionally created a profile to search within. And London's a very good example of that. So we know that, I mean, in the news, there's been 750,000 people apparently have left London in the last 18 months. So what we've seen is, as an example, is people who would typically look for a job in central London are now looking for a job, I guess, in their home location, because that's where they're working from. So I guess that's one thing we've seen, is the locations that people are looking for jobs has changed. But also what we have seen is an increase in people looking for jobs outside of their kind of traditional sector. And I think that's probably two reasons. One is that, you know, at the beginning of the pandemic, with retail and hospitality being the market sectors that were most readily affected straight away, we naturally saw people who would typically look for jobs in those areas look for others. So they were thinking potentially about their transferable skills and looking at other areas. But that hasn't changed necessarily. So we are still seeing people, particularly those who have upskilled or taught themselves different ways of working over the last 18 months, whether that be moving from job sector A to job sector B by retraining. That's absolutely bearing itself out in what people are doing on the website.
And that kind of information, that kind of topical, up-to-date information, is invaluable to employers. If there's an exodus, if you like, of skills from the capital to other places in the UK, then employers, when they come to hire people that they thought would still be there and they're not, then that's one of the answers. And in their planning for recruitment in the future, they might be more likely to say, well, let's set up a location outside of London or outside the major cities where we know that people have moved to, or we're unlikely to find skills here. So we need to have people who are set up to be more remote or even much further afield, even outside of the country.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I think, I've been to some events recently where obviously employers have been talking about, I guess, what they're doing to attract talent to their organizations, particularly in the way that the market is at the moment, where the explosion of job seeking activity that we thought we would see at the end of September hasn't materialized. So you're absolutely right. I think people are starting to think about how they can recruit people differently, whether that be geographically or based on the skills or the competencies they're looking for. So I think this, again, is maybe accelerated those sort of changes in recruitment behavior that maybe they might have manifested themselves 2 or 3 years down the line, but we've just seen that happen.
You just reminded me of something. Going back to the financial crisis of 2008, for about 2 years there was a severe impact in the marketplace that affected particularly people who were in legal professions and property and finance and so on and so on. And what that left was a scar, if you like, on those professions, to a degree in others as well, but those in particular, which meant that even 10 years down the line, you can detect that gap in skills, repeated 10 years on. So people who would typically have 10 years experience as lawyers won't have, because 10 years ago they just weren't hiring trainees. That just didn't happen. And we can see that there will be a scar tissue, if you like, of what's happened in the past year and a half, reflected in who's been trained or not trained during this period that will be available in a year or 2 years or 5 years' time. So all of those facts and figures are absolutely invaluable to people who are in the workforce planning business. And whilst people might talk about the great resignation, as has often been written about in the past year, certainly the past 6 months, the facts of it are really only borne out when you see what people are doing and first organisations to see that would be, sites like Reed. So I would imagine, well, I'm going to ask you, are there organisations who come to you and say, do you have this information? Can we have access to that sort of knowledge? Can you share with us what you know about the changing workforce out there?
Yeah, so we do see that. So I think a lot of our customers on the B2B side of the business, whether that be recruitment agencies or direct employers, are very much interested in data. So they're much more interested potentially ever before in terms, well, not just data, also insight. So it's not just about the facts and figures, it's the insight that sits behind that.
Yeah.
And I think that's partly because of what we've just been talking about, organizations trying to make really critical business decisions through the lens of the people that they're looking to recruit. And I think, again, the insight that we can provide them, so in terms of some of the data signals, so what we're seeing in terms of candidate behavior, will inform the way that people go about recruiting moving forward. So you're absolutely right. And I think some of that does play into, again, not necessarily looking at an individual's previous job. It might be more looking about the kind of soft skills. It might be looking at the core competencies that they have, rather than actually, I'm looking for this job, so naturally the person I'm looking for will have done this job somewhere else. I think it's much more complex than that now. And I think people, certainly direct employers, for example, that I've spoken to at events in recent weeks, are very much in that mindset of thinking about, rather than this job kind of leads to this job, it's more actually, what is this individual's skill set? And actually mindset as well becomes more important.
Yeah, and again, those insights, and I think insights is the key word, is some of the most valuable information you can be sharing on your careers sections, where you can be, reflecting back to candidates the nature of the markets that they're looking to find jobs in, especially people who are in the early stage careers or are maybe on the older end and thinking, are there any jobs out there for people with my experience? Should I or could I switch from this sector to that sector? What are the options for me? So that kind of advice is really invaluable when there's so much turmoil going on. So in terms of remaining knowledgeable about the needs of job seekers, is there outreach work that you do to survey candidates on a regular basis to remain on the ball as to what their needs are, and then deploy that in the website?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I mentioned earlier on our philosophy. So one of our philosophies is very much about being customer first. So we've gone through a really interesting journey over the last maybe 3 or 4 years to really make sure that we're focusing on the end user, whether that be a recruitment agency trying to find a candidate, whether that be a direct employer that has a critical role they're looking to fill, or if we're looking at job seekers to think, well, actually, how can we help them in the next step in their career? So actually, what we've massively increased over the last couple of years is the number of touch points that we have with those end users. So we have, for example, our product and design teams do regular research with users, not just about what their experience with our services, but actually almost taking it up a level to really understand what is it that what are the problems that they need us to help solve. And that kind of design thinking philosophy is really baked through everything that we're trying to do. And when our teams are trying to develop a new service for a user, that's very much at the heart of it. Is really kind of taking user feedback, taking insight, trying to build a service which is appropriate, and also testing that with the users as well to see what see what that feedback is. So that is a really, really important part of what we've been trying to achieve, for sure.
On that testing side of things, your technology decisions will obviously directly affect your users. So how do those decisions, or decisions that you've made in the past year, directly benefited both recruiters and job seekers?
I think the key thing comes down to, I guess, one of the kind of, I guess, points that I've articulated a couple of times today is really about this solving this problem. So going back to the point around earlier on about adding the filter for sort of working from home and flexible working, that was because we were seeing an influx of information from candidates to say that this is what they were looking for. So what we tried to do in that instance was to try and impact a candidate problem that we'd seen, very clearly in our face, and try to solve that problem, which meant it was not just best for the job seeker, as you said earlier on, it also benefited the user as well. So I guess that's one way that we've done it. We, when we were starting out in the pandemic, and we knew that there was a real need for kind of key workers. We changed our homepage to make sure that we allowed key workers easier access to the right jobs. So I guess these are all things which come back to ultimately, again, the problem that we're trying to solve. And as far as the technology decisions is concerned with, again, it's about taking, what's the issue that we're trying to help someone with, and what is the best way of executing that? And sometimes it might be something that we can build very quickly. Sometimes it might be that there's other technology out there in the market that can help us with this. So I think that really sits at the heart of how we make those technology decisions.
You mentioned flexible working. I know that candidates these days are much more tuned into, looking for and expecting diverse working environments. They're looking for employers who can share that they have, or they're aspiring to be, a more diverse working environment. Is that one of the areas where you're able to reflect that on behalf of employers, so that candidates know more about the environment they're potentially applying for?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been a journey over the last couple of years to work with employers directly to ensure that when they are posting a job, they're not just talking about the job. They're also talking about the environment that they're working within. Yeah. They're talking about what it is like to work within that organization, the culture, and also, if is corporate social responsibility an incredibly important part of their employer brand? What are they doing to help inclusion and belonging within their organization? So it's absolutely a way that we engage with employers directly about that. But also, employers want to ask us the question, how can I best do this? And for me, that's a really important insight to say. It's not just us educating customers to say, this is what we think you should be doing. There's a huge groundswell within the market of people saying, right, we understand that we need to do this to build our employer brand more effectively and attract the right candidates to our organization. So I guess we're working alongside these customers to try and make sure that we give them the best way of displaying that information.
Yeah, and I know that you're very good at showcasing organizations where they can talk about themselves, not just the role, but the wider organization. And on the other side, candidates are much more experienced with interviewing over video now, whether it be on Zoom calls or one-sided videos. In terms of making it possible for employers to be putting out video content either about themselves generally or about specific vacancies, what's the future there from your point of view?
I think there's a huge future for employers who are looking to create video content, and I think certainly the more progressive direct employers are already going down that path anyway. So we're seeing talent acquisition teams and employer branding teams working much more closely together. And I guess recruitment marketing in-house being a way of an organization ensuring that they display the most authentic, attractive side of their organization to job seekers. And I think the organizations who do that well have some unbelievably powerful content about whether it be their organization more generally, a day in the life, again, talking about people with different backgrounds within their organization. So I think video content is a really powerful way of getting across some of the things which doesn't necessarily resonate if you put it in the written word. So I think video can be a very powerful tool for that. Yeah.
Can you see the time where every job will have a video attached to the advert?
I think every job, that might be a little further away. I think the challenge is if you're a very large global organization with a very clear employer brand strategy, I think you can do that. If you're a small direct employer that isn't an experienced recruiter, I think it's going to be very difficult for you to create something which is easy to execute and compelling. So I think we're a little way away from every organization being able to create that content, or every job be able to hold that. But I would certainly see an increasing number of vacancies having similar content.
Yeah. Louise in the chat, she's asking opinions on a video-only CV database. That might be a little bit off, but I know that there are companies out there who are looking to change the landscape, and we know that right now, because so much has been flipped upside down, it's a good time to pitch and launch and test these products to see if the audience will bite. But of course, at the same time, with an organization like Reed and such an established brand, you can't be making big sudden moves where you have a loyal database of job seekers and of clients where they have expectations, and don't want to see things change too quickly. How do you moderate the speed of change to make sure that you're bringing most people with you without anyone stepping out and saying, "Oh no, this is too modern for me"?
Yeah, so you're right. We have a very large core of users, whether that be job seekers or employers, who I guess understand our service and services like ours and know what they expect. So we have to make sure that we probably do two things. One is to continue to focus on, I guess, the core service, as I'll call it, and make sure that that's as effective as we can. But we have to be responsive to what's going on in the market. Video content, whether that be a video CV or a job ad which has video content, if that's the way that the market is moving, then we have to try and find ways of I guess, augmenting our service to fit what's relevant. So I guess what we have to try and do is to ensure that we are balancing out, because new services, and again, going back to that user feedback bit, understanding what we think are the new trends, or indeed what is out there in the market, which job seekers are telling us is compelling, and sitting that alongside how things currently work. So the point around a video-only CV database is a really interesting one. I'm not sure that necessarily will manifest itself soon, but actually we know candidates want to, I guess, talk about themselves in inverted commas in different ways, whether that's through video interviews, which probably has accelerated in the last 18 months, or indeed putting a portfolio across in a different way. So I think the way that job seekers display their attributes will change. I'm not sure in the short term it will necessarily go quite that far.
I think the first thing that comes to mind when I think of that is an employer with a smartphone swiping left and right, and that doesn't seem like informed decision making when it comes to hiring. So it would require a lot of thought there to make sure that things are working well. So in terms of your roadmap ahead, as a long established organization with access to mountains of relevant data on the marketplace, what should we experience from Reed for recruiters and candidates in the coming year?
I think our real focus is about making sure that we have as relevant and personalized a service as we possibly can. So you talked about data. We have a lot of data, of course. We have a large database of users, and we have millions of job seekers coming to our site every month. The thing I think which will be most important to users generally is around making sure that the service that they interact with is as relevant to them as possible. So we're all used to consumer grade experiences when we are, I don't know, ordering food or we're buying something online. We're used to very, very high quality personalized services.
Of course.
And for me, the way that we will develop our service in the coming years is to obviously be mindful of exactly what our users come to our site to do, but also making sure what we're putting in front of them is an experience which is very relevant. So making sure that the jobs we display to them are relevant to their profile, and using some of the information we talked about earlier on. It's not just what's on their profile, it's what they're engaging with, it's what they're applying for, it's maybe what they're being successful with in recruitment processes. I think there's ways that we will absolutely develop our service in the coming years to be much more focused on trying to give those high level consumer grade experiences without diverting too much from obviously what everyone knows that we're here to do. But ultimately, if we can give that user something which they come to us and say, that experience was amazing, next time I need to use a service, I will go back to that site, then I think we've kind of done our job. So
would you say hyper personalization is the future?
I think certainly it's absolutely the way that we're looking to develop for sure.
Fantastic. Well, I'll look forward to that. I've just noticed the time. We've gone a little bit over. Simon, I'm going to say thank you very much. You've been a great guest, fantastic NORA winner, and it's been great to have you on this afternoon. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
I'm sure if we had more time, we could ask questions all afternoon. We'll save that for the next time. I will also say best of luck to Reed for next year, to try and make it 3 in a row. That would be quite something. But we'll have to see what the job seekers and what the judges say next year. In the meantime, enjoy your trophies, and thank you everyone else who's joined us this afternoon, who's contributed in the chat, or who's watching on any of the streams, or indeed anyone who's watching on replay. We will have more shows coming up just shortly. I think we've got some lined up for later this week and next week. Certainly, we're going to try and get all our NORA winners in before Christmas. But for the meantime, Simon, thank you. Thanks, Reed, for being with us today. And at that, I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.